Man,
No.
I'm courageous.
Okay.
I'm shameless right now.
Okay.
But sometimes I still feel hopeless.
Okay.
I gotta blow my brains out.
Okay.
I think
Good y'all. I'm back. Osama's Son's Lost Discography. I heard a song with him and Spaz. I forgot what song it was. I'm smacked. It was a phenomenal song. How was your day?
This easily had one of the quickest yet most controversial come-ups. And
Nah, it was Codeine Dreams and it was a fucking other song. It was the I forgot. I heard on Perfect Plug. I forgot, but yeah.
the underground to date, having
There was
gone from just a
two
few hundred
songs I
monthly
heard.
listeners to
Kinda
having
interesting.
hundreds of thousands of fans seemingly out of nowhere, even going as far as touring the country, selling out venues, and even performing at massive events like Rolling Loud, all of which was done over the span of just a few months, mostly off the back of just a few of his recent projects. And although those projects would perform well, it would spawn clone allegations that would even eventually start a back and forth between Osama and arguably one of the biggest artists of the new generation, being
Pop
Ken
Smoke.
Carson, that would actually somehow end up turning out favorably for Osama. However, what a lot of people don't realize is just how deep Osama's discography really runs and just how many different sounds he's experimented with. So that's why today we'll be starting from the beginning and asking the question of where did Osama really start?
I wanted to say this too. Yo, Jace dropped a song called Goose Creek. I saw a post on, I'm not nasty, I saw a post on Twitter and it said something about like it was a diss track on him. That was another reason I wanted to watch this because I got the other video locked and loaded like a cock back 4 or 5. Nah, but just-
Born on May 20th in the year 2003, Amari Middleton, also known as Osama's son, was born originally in Ohio, but due to his parents separating pretty early on in his life, they would end up relocating to a city in South Carolina known as Goose Creek, which sounds like a goofy name, but it is a
How this nigga get locked in with them baby life niggas? He was throwing it up in the videos.
decently well-sized city
When you
with
get
a
to Atlanta.
population of around 50,000 people that sits just about 20 minutes outside of Charleston. And it's where Osama would grow up and spend a majority of his childhood. And even though his parents were separated long before he was even born, he would still grow up in a pretty large family, having multiple different brothers and sisters and even uncles, who funnily enough, all were pretty heavily involved in making music.
They used to have their own studios. So when I was a kid, they used to like write songs for me and make me go in the studio and say shit. And my older brothers too. My older brothers used to get me
No, this nigga just confirmed he has a ghostwriter.
on the tracks. My stepbrothers and shit. So everybody around me was rapping.
Which is also where Osama would get some of his earliest music inspirations, being heavily inspired by the sounds and most notably the aesthetics of artists such as Future, Cardi, Young Thug, and the Speaker Knockers, all of which in one way or another would end up pretty heavily impacting his current sound. However, music was far from Osama's main interest when he was young.
That's a weak one too. Get that nigga in the gym now.
Instead, what he really wanted to do was ball.
Bro, what flick was that? This nigga look
Music
like,
was far from Osama's main interest when he was young. Instead, what he really wanted
look at this nigga, he like he just tripped.
to do was ball, with Osama exploring a lot of different interests growing up, such as filming old skating videos, dancing clips, and even getting into football and more infamously basketball, which is when he would end up playing for his JV team all throughout his sophomore year of high school, with there even being both videos and pictures I found on his school's website of him plotting, warming up, shooting, and averaging 2 points a game. However, he would pretty quickly realize that ball wasn't really going to be his path. And it also didn't help that heading into his junior year of high school, COVID was slowly starting to build up and would pretty much end up keeping everyone inside for quite a while. However, right as the lockdown started to go into full effect towards the beginning of 2020, Osama would also start to get back into the music. And the person to get him back into the music would actually be another one of his uncles who was at the time both rapping and producing for himself. And this same uncle would actually end up deciding to introduce Osama to FL Studio. However, at
He's had a sweaty carrot. That's crazy though.
first, he wasn't really all that interested in becoming an artist. Instead, he would end up starting up one of his first known YouTube pages in July of 2020 and would go forward over the next few months to produce and release multiple different instrumentals under his prod name of Damn 4K, with the beats mainly featured being different type beats for artists such as Slime Cedo,
That's my birthday. Yo, this is a whack beat. This is a whack beat too.
and Chief Keef.
This is a tough beat.
with each video that was being uploaded at the time only pulling in between 20 to 50 views a video, which sadly made it pretty obvious that at least in the beginning, producing wasn't really going to get him anywhere. So instead, he would finally try his hand at releasing music, which he would do under the handle of Proud of You Mari, with one of his earliest tracks that's still available today being titled as Off the Head. And was only one of the various different singles recovered from this period, with some other tracks being dated all the way back to April of 2020, most of which have sadly nowadays been lost to time, except for What Hasn't, which brings us to other tracks have sadly nowadays been lost to time, except
Lucky I can't read, bitch.
For What Hasn't, which brings us to other tracks such as No Hook, Right Now,
She said, Mari, when you go put that on lean, and I said, nah, right now. I just pop me.
and One Thing.
There's one thing, there's one thing.
All of which are still available today, and all were pretty obviously recorded over different YouTube instrumentals and then just released unofficially over on his SoundCloud page. And those 4 singles that I just showed you are all a part of the around 13 different known singles from this era, all of which, as I'm sure you could hear, definitely had a pretty amateur sound to them. However, this sound wouldn't stick forever because almost a year after he first started rapping, he would end up deciding to start taking his music a little more seriously, and he decided to make a name change to what we all know him as today, being Osama-san, which was a name that basically just took his dad's name, Osama, and just added son to it, giving us Osama-san. And pretty quick,
I'm still questioning like the Jace beef, if he's gonna bring that up, or like, because I have another vid for that, but I'm just like, you know.
after this name change, you can really tell that he was starting to get a slightly better understanding of the music-making process, with Osama starting to self-produce a decent amount of his own music and also starting to slightly mix his vocals. And he would most importantly start to get a little more consistent, releasing tracks such as Purple Lemonade,
One day we gonna be great. I'm pulling up before that day.
Okay, turn this shit off too.
Stop Flexing,
Run a bag, got nigga, let's go. Just walk in with a badass hoe. Finna leave out with
I would've liked this shit back in 27, like back in like 2012.
I said was trying to swerve off. They bitch way too horny.
which funnily enough is a track that released on the same day that Lil O would end up,
Bitch too horny.
which funnily enough is a track that released on
Grown man. Oh no, that's a jacket on his shoulders. I thought this nigga had a crop top, custom elongated length arm.
the same day that Lil O would end up graduating from Goose Creek High School, which not too long after would be followed up by the release of his first ever project, which released on August 5th of 2021 and was titled as I'm the Man, and featured tracks such as I'm the Man,
Jump out the whip on flex. Got 2 points in the bitch right next to me. She like, oh my god, you a best.
Fold,
Hop in SRT, that we go fast, yeah. I just poured a fucking pint of mud in a flask, yeah.
and Trap or Die.
Your whole shit gon' search, so don't get mad, you cannot stop it. Pull out all black coupe, windows tinted.
And right after the release of this
I'm glad
tape,
he,
it
like,
would be the start of one of
is
his
done with
most
that.
consistent and experimental eras yet, with Osama remixing and giving his own spin on just about every sound you can really think of, remixing artists like Chief Keef,
Started off my day with a fat ass wolf. This nigga Steve slide.
Autumn and Cam,
Hop in the push start jack. These niggas be going outside. Got a big gun and it came with a flash. Niggas be gay.
Isaiah TG,
Need a hella cause I got some ass. I say I got money, but that was a cap.
and even Summers.
He ruined this song.
And the funniest thing is that these songs he was remixing weren't really surface level songs, especially at the time, which is a little bit funny considering that nowadays he's either working and or beefing with half the artists on this list. But getting back on track, Osama wasn't only releasing remixes at the time, because he also would end up releasing yet another 4-track EP, which released on October 16th of 2021 under the name of Vengeance, which released with tracks such as Promise I'm Gonna Win,
Bitch, I'm walking in Margellas. Caught a chopper Jizzy cause this bitch gon' rock.
Headed,
He sound like doo-wop a little bit, and I want to see like on the last track, like the last album, the I'm the Man shit, whatever that was. He sounded like doo-wop a little bit. Like a little bit, like I could tell the difference for real, because doo-wop's a generational talent. You're never gonna get that again. Like, you have to wait seven seasons, 7 summers.
Fans are now slaves, so live like wow. You can run, but where you gon' go? Don't be a hoe too.
and My Heart Drop,
Everything stop when I see you. When my heart drop when I see you. Don't be a fool, she gon' pull.
which, as I'm sure you could hear, had a pretty similar sound to what Osama had been experimenting with beforehand, with the sound bouncing around a lot throughout this time period, with a good portion of his music from this era sounding like a mix between 2018 Plug and Be Summers, some early Sosa, and most blatantly 2019 Angel/Ghost era Isaiah, using a lot of the same deliveries, aesthetics, and presets, which, to be fair, isn't that uncommon, especially considering that a large majority of the underground either admits they were inspired by these artists or are just liars. However, he would only end up making use of the sound one last time on his last release of the year, which released on December 12th of 2021 and was titled as Carnival, which featured tracks such as Izzy.
I was feeling all that Izzy. I put X, now I feel fizzy. Straight face shots, now he look dizzy.
Go To.
They like you don't call me no more. You made the wrong move and y'all gon' on me.
And Wow.
How the fuck it go wrong? High speed chase, we gon' play my song. Whoa, it but it comes so strong. Gotta hurry.
And not only that, but around the same time, Osama would start filming and uploading some of his earliest known trillers for singles such as Save Him.
But feeling you, boy, you don't come around no more. You grown that thing I like and you get clapped though. No.
Choosing.
They love play my music. Fuck, we gon' get to it. Then they say won't smoke with me, but chopper is gon'
Dad.
What would you do if you got a bag? What would you do if I give you a pass? Fat bag with my smut on gas. I say go.
All of which, as you can hear, did definitely show off a bit of his previously mentioned inspirations. However, throughout this period, he would also end up trying out quite a few newer sounds, some of which he would later become quite well known for, mostly on tracks such as Fuck That Shit, 4 AM, and also 3K. All of which would be showed off even further with the release of his next few trillers for tracks such as Shout Out Plug,
Yeah, you can get fucked up. And I don't need fight, but a bullet's too tough. Say you got 30 shots, I don't think that.
and Picked Up.
This whole one get picked up. Bitch, on my twin, every finna head up.
This is why I stopped shopping on Amazon, and you should too.
My fault, y'all. I look forgot I was recording. I'm not gonna lie, I'm really smacked right now.
And all of these tracks would be some of the first music to take Osama's sound in a pretty different direction, with his sound slowly starting to dip off from the previously mentioned Slay and Plug and B sound, and start to steer more towards a dark plug and more Sigil S sound, which he would end up fully pursuing, entering one of his most progressive and consistent years yet, being 2022, which he would kick off with the release of his first known music video, which released on January 14th of 2022, titled High as Shit. And not only was he releasing music videos, but he would also end up unofficially releasing his first and last tape of the year, which we will talk about, that was titled as Bloody Osama, which was a tape that was almost entirely produced by Osama and was also fully hosted by a friend of his at the time known as Bloody Pints, who had been hosting a lot of his earliest music throughout the first half of his career. But as mentioned, this tape would actually end up being his first and last release of the year, which was mainly because he would start to realize that dropping tapes was kind of pointless if you didn't already have a fan base to back it. And not only that, but like most people coming fresh out of high school, he was job hopping just like crazy.
I started at Sky Zone, then Wendy's, UPS, some random ass warehouse job. I was moving like lumber and shit. I worked at another Walmart, a hotel. No, I think that's it. It's really 10 jobs.
However, funnily enough, throughout this period of hopping from job to job to job, he would end up making some of the most progress with his music yet, with his first single that's still available today being uploaded on his SoundCloud account on January 31st of 2022, which was then followed up by the release of yet another music video for his single titled Go to Hell. And then, not too long after the release of this music video, he would go on an insane stretch of singles which gave us arguably some of his best work to date, with tracks such as Me vs. World,
Drink 3 pints in one day. Fuck nigga be smoking on shit. See the cops be shaking, babe.
Ha,
Tell the whole ass of us up. No, I can't show you no love. The rest of do my day.
Defeat,
Pull up, let's go, can you get for a night? It's a jug time.
Jug in My Sleep,
We get bands. Beat your block. Archie Ryan. Big ass lock from my rim. Big ass
Rehab,
nigga, what you judge? Put up about 2 cents, I'm in your hood.
Muddy, Going Crazy,
They don't check on me no more. It's okay, I'm by myself, I'm back cutting, I'm alone.
finally Catch Up. which most importantly would actually end up being one of the first singles to get picked up by the Instagram music pages, or more specifically, pages like Cap and Tubman Underground, who would end up pushing and reposting the snippet released alongside this song. It would also, most importantly, really help to build up Osama's fan base and image, with these pages pushing countless different quotable lines from the music alongside providing just some funny ass videos such as the infamous Fake Genius interview.
Basically, when I say get shot in your shit,
This
just thinking that
nigga
shit
bored. That got it. This nigga made this shitty ass.
funny.
I respect it
Basically
though.
saying, you come around me acting funny and I don't know you, or you think shit funny around here, you gonna get shot in your shit.
Although the most important thing Osama would get from this push, aside from developing his fan base obviously, would be a connect. The most important thing Osama would get
This Vivian, yeah, you know what I was trying to say. Why he's allowed to do
from this
that?
push, aside from developing his fan base
not a
obviously,
business,
would be
like
a
a
connection
image.
with a large group of producers and
This nigga
artists
fade
who
clean
helped to developing his fan base obviously,
This nigga
would be a
fade clean
connection
as
with a
fuck.
large group of
That's the
producers and
cleanest
artists
fade I've
who
ever
helped to
seen in my
develop
life.
his sound and image even further. Getting connected with artists such as Smoking Skull, Wildcard Uno, Margella, 1AM, OK Mar, and Osanta, alongside the producers in the group such as 30, 2vert, Perk 40, TDF, and also Bullymon. All of which are artists and producers that would end up being pretty vital to his
They all
career.
have jeans
And
and
also
hoodies
around
on.
the same time, he would end up being featured
Nobody
pretty
noticed
heavily
that?
on an archive account that was closely tied to all of the previously mentioned artists and producers that was known as Slime Point, where he would upload a bunch of different singles and collab tracks such as Fairfax,
And I see ya, let's go fast. Get up, bitch, hope I don't crash. Flag nigga down like where your class. Step out first, you leave.
Clothes,
Right out, push your shit. I spend bricks on bricks. And them projects flip your whip.
and Expensive Habits.
Man, this whole inside the club. I can't live, but it no. That's all I do is jump.
And also, most notably after getting these connections, he would
might
start
have to
working
hear that
very,
first
very
one,
closely
and the
with
last
some of
one
the
might
previously
come.
mentioned producers, being both Bullymon, 30, and also Soldier Spirits, where they would work together to release some of his biggest tracks at the time, such as Front Row,
They say you won't die. I get up way too high. I was in the sky.
and The Cut,
I got rats on the TV and the stupid hoe with me. Yeah, I'm kicking shit with boobies.
Back from Dead,
My God doing push-ups. One free smoke to push-ups. And I two to lift up.
and Garfield.
Bitch, I'm smoking. I got P. Watch me flex on VIP. Yeah, finna come knock off your G.
All of which would end up gaining a massive buzz online, most notably from tracks like Front Row, Back from Dead,
on his
and
neck.
Garfield. All of which would end up getting their own
Nigga
trailers or
gangbang on his
snippets,
neck.
which, as we will see, would end up playing a
Like
pretty
Black
massive
Wallow.
part of his blow up that would end up happening pretty rapidly over the next few months, which would most notably be headlined by Osama starting to take his marketing a little more seriously, which he would do by starting up his own TikTok page where he would actually kind of become a bit of a TikToker, using the app to talk with fans, make random shit posts, and also post updates on the music, which he would end up releasing quite a lot of around this time. All of which would be kickstarted with his first new release of the year, being a collab tape between the previously mentioned producer, 2vert, that released on January 15th,
This nigga producer look funny as fuck. Cause y'all saw that meme.
2023 and was titled as Osama Vert, which featured tracks such as Vet,
Yeah, the beat punching. Take one, take two, I'm just punching. Brand new hoe, she be punching. Don't know my
Monster Jam,
bitch, I slap with stickers, I don't care. Drop the low, we send bullets through your head.
and Strictly Juggin',
Walking high as fuck, I love your bitch, cause I'm next up. Rap.
which was very quickly followed up by the release of yet another EP, which released only a little over a month later, and is definitely a personal favorite of mine, being titled as Too Slime, with tracks such as No Plea,
I never take no plea, yo. Push up on your block, and I got that stick on me.
Win,
Punch red, crusty crap, you act fake, gon' leave you last, yeah. I just drink that back.
and Farm Life.
Yeah, I been hitting blocks, I bet I also know I did it. Oh, so you say that's your hoe? Damn, there you know I
I'm about to
And
like
right
pass
around the
out
same
in 5
time,
seconds.
he would also end up getting in contact with an extremely well-known manager in the scene, who's most notably managed artists like Destroy Lone,
Yo, no funny shit. I was watching this whole thing, and I'm like, yo, bro, this nigga has talked about so much music. And I was there gonna compare it to the Spaz story. But now I'm like looking at it, and I'm like, yo, this nigga Spaz, like, went to jail. Nigga made, like, mad shit happened in that nigga's life in that video, and it's just fucking me up. Because I'm like, bro, what is this nigga gonna talk about his life? But it says lost discography. I should have, yeah, that's my fault.
only throughout his come up being Hijack Steph. And originally, Steph would actually be the person to reach out to Osama and ask to host some of his unreleased songs, which led to us getting some extremely well-known gems such as Filter,
Bitch, I do this shit without a filter.
Model B,
You can get your head tapped in that truck, not no scab, no super, and we kick.
Draco Season.
Yeah, then twist so get up, and I view it heat up, yeah. I gotta put that lid.
And after slowly building a connection through hosting, Steph would actually end up becoming his full-time manager. And it's also likely the reason behind a lot of the really smart moves we'd see Osama make in the pretty near future. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, Osama was far from done with releasing music around this period, and was really just kind of getting started. Because not too long after he started working with Steph, he would end up releasing an 8-track collab tape with the previously mentioned artist being Osanta, under the name of Osama, which featured gems such as Good Try,
But your hoe finna take flight, no, it's Santa, bitch get right, I'm finna walk down pipe.
Glowed Up,
I just pull it up, in a beamer truck, spinning bands on shit.
and Over.
Get up off a dudes, losing time.
Up on the dot.
And only a little over a month later, he would then also end up releasing yet another EP, which was hosted by DJ Grenade, entitled as Bad Habits, which featured even more tracks
DJ
such as
Grenade.
Love My Glock,
Trust love and I thought, bitch, I only trust my Glock. Adding 50 shots in the
Trappin',
making plays, yeah, I show my way, yeah. Ready for your name,
and Brink.
lay your head up, put a pineapple for my car, yeah.
And as crazy as it might seem, all the way up until this point in Osama's career,
Yo, I ain't gonna lie, this is like the worst put on to music I've ever been in. I said I like 2 of this nigga's tracks, bro. This shit, like, this nigga.
and through everything we've just covered,
He had a couple
he was
songs,
still
but
only
I don't
averaging
know if I
around
like
1,000 monthly
them, like,
listeners
I mean,
with maybe only
y'all
a few
should put
thousand
some
IG
tracks,
followers,
but y'all probably
which,
won't
as we
feel
will see with the release of his next few singles,
This
it
nigga do like
wouldn't stay this
17
way
songs
forever,
at me.
with some classic
That's
tracks
7
such
albums.
as Slime Crew,
I'm a slime, yo, crew, and post it up with like 5, 6 in a
Thugging With My Rounds,
thugging with my rounds, yeah.
That's kind of, that's kind of not, I ain't gonna lie about that.
So base, I got hella baby, pull up.
That's, what is this? This nigga look disproportionate and like, yeah.
Cleopatra,
My slide got red on it. Me and Lil Pete running from the fans. Let's go chain on my neck.
and most notably, CTSV,
Yeah, I love make shit dip. Yeah, I get out your chip. Yeah, put your trap.
which would arguably be one of the first moments in Osama's career where he would start to see some actual numbers. With this track alongside its music video, which released on April 21st of 2023, pretty much trending all over TikTok, to the point where it's pretty much inescapable even if you kept up with the scene like only slightly often. And the craziest thing is, this wasn't even the only thing that was attached to Osama's name that was popping off at the time, because almost all at the exact same time, his name would start to trend pretty much everywhere. With his previously mentioned group blowing up on Twitter for being time, his name would start to trend pretty much
Shout out P
everywhere.
Stacks. That's a fat ass backwood. I ain't gonna lie. I'm looking at it from here. I'm like, damn, that shit, that motherfucker heavy.
With his previously
Shout out
mentioned group
P
blowing
Stacks,
up on
bro.
Twitter for being very
Yeah,
cornerly
dude,
referred to
awesome.
as the new Slayer World. And over on TikTok,
That's
just
kinda
about
cool.
every trailer I mentioned previously for songs like Back from Dead and Garfield were
pointless.
starting to go a little
That's
bit
even
viral
fun.
thanks to the Lego AI trend that was happening at the time. And all in all, Osama at this point was pretty much at the top of the underground. All that he really had to do at this point was just capitalize, which is exactly what he would end up doing, with the long-awaited release of his first debut studio project under the name of Osama Season. And this project alone would pretty much end up completely changing his career almost overnight, with this project being an almost complete
This nigga just sleep.
change in direction sound-wise that would end up being received extremely
This nigga just sleep. He look like Cardi a little bit with the, like, in this exact one, like, this nigga's just waking up. Oh, it's a
well,
metaphor.
most notably
You
with
gotta
tracks
stop
like Troops,
sleeping on it.
I'm outside my troops.
This nigga's a genius.
I'm in the back of the coupe.
Uh-oh,
Mix a 8 with a drink. What the fuck you get on?
and obviously X and Sex,
I just took that extra up. Yeah, see, y'all got kiss for
all of which
It's
were
an
picking up
obvious
some
thing. I
insane
don't
traction
know.
over on
X and
TikTok,
Sex.
alongside the barrage of different music videos, live performances,
Someone like
and
the big
underground
bands
shows that were
with
being
white
released
people.
back to back to back, all of which was coming together to help make Osama a pretty massive name in the scene at the time, which even led to Osama signing a deal with a very well-known record label being Atlantic Records. However, I would be lying if I said this project was met with no criticism, because no matter what, when you combine blowing up insanely quick with a sound shift, it's almost always bound to spawn in some hate. Which brings us to the part y'all already knew was coming, being the Ken Carson clone allegations. Almost right off the bat, a lot of the
No funny shit. I never thought about that. And I don't like Ken Carson. Like, his music sucks to me.
clone allegations stem mainly from a few
like
different
him.
tracks on here, being the previously mentioned Lil O, X and Sex, and most infamously Cutta, which is the only one out of any of these I'm going to acknowledge just because the other ones legitimately like they make like zero sense to me. I'm almost certain for a lot of these tracks people just hear the loud 808s and just like hit their head with a mallet. However, on Cutta I can see it. Mostly it's in the ad-libs and the mix, which is pretty damn similar, but I think what gets a lot of people up in arms on this track is mainly his delivery, which is honestly what to me really sets Osama apart from Ken in a lot of different ways. It sometimes even makes him harder to me, because Osama on almost every track on here aside from this one comes in with some solid energy, which paired along with his mixing, beat selection, and vocal glitches, it kind of just sets him apart in a lot of ways, whether the opium concentration camp wants me to think that way or not. And like I mentioned in my album of the year video, this is the point of music, is to find a sound and add your own style and personality to it. And looking outside of just this one project, as this video has hopefully showed off a little bit, Osama is pretty versatile. And maybe I'm giving a little too much credit to Steph, but I definitely think he played a part in this whole sound shift, especially with the marketing going forward, because the previously mentioned clone allegations would actually end up leaving the TikTok comment sections and making their rounds over on Twitter, which led to the start of a mini subliminal back and forth between Osama and Ken Carson, all of which started with rumors that were circulating around at the time that Ken had actually been trying to directly blackball Osama, which he had apparently been trying to do by telling producers that worked with both him and Osama, such as Legion, Sky, and Rock, to no longer work with Osama.
That's crazy. This nigga tried to kill him from within, like with some real like tactical wartime shit. That's
However,
real.
these
Real music is back. That's what I want to say. Thank you. Fuck all this internet shit. Let's get back to the real nitty gritty. Stop this nigga from making music. Kill him.
claims that were only
kill
based
that
on
nigga
3
right
alleged
now.
tweets from random
That's what I
Twitter
wanna
accounts
see. No,
were surprisingly fake. However, this narrative would end up spreading pretty quickly due to the mini beef that was going on between Ken and Osama's fanbase, which eventually led to it actually getting Ken's attention only a few days later, in which he responded in classic Ken fashion by tweeting multiple
Wait, I don't know them niggas. Stop chasing narratives. Find better shit to post. How more valuable than money. Yo.
direct lines, with each just being one run-on word that pretty much just called out the allegations as BS. However,
What's that? Yo, you know I went to school with a nigga that looked like Ken Carson. No funny shit.
after Osama got a reaction from both Ken and his fan base, I'm pretty sure this is when Osama and his team realized just how beneficial it would be to not only get attention off of a bigger artist, but to also get attention off of a bigger artist that's in a similar lane with fans that will more than likely enjoy the music if given enough time. So that's when he would really start to play heavily into
this nigga got a one of them masks.
the clone allegations, with one of the earlier examples of this being a Q&A that he did in his Discord by showing off a particular song that still hasn't been released that was titled as Cut Up.
Y'all hear this?
What is this skin called, bro? Like, that's not even a real ad. I just like this shit what YouTube just throws at me bullshit.
And even if this track wasn't intentionally supposed to clone Ken or Cardi, it still would be pushed that way by the fans. Next, in one of his funnier moves, he would end up completely dyeing his dreads blonde in a weirdly similar way to another opium artist you might know, being Playboy Cardi. And not too long after he dyed his dreads blonde, all over Twitter people would start accusing him of even stealing photo ideas, with pictures of Cardi and Osama.
That's mad dick. So, that's not even the same. Like, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I don't know, but it's not. Are they like the same color? That's what I was trying to say.
Trending pretty much
His
everywhere,
hair is
which
darker.
pretty much at the same time would end up putting Osama's fan base into just like overdrive, which whether he was doing it intentionally or not would kind of end up making his fan base even stronger. And while all of what I just mentioned was happening, Osama was still managing to keep his core fan base pretty satisfied by releasing a bunch of new singles and EPs, making use of both his older sound and his newer style with some different elements thrown onto it. Namely with the release of a 4-track EP that released on his alt account Lil O and was titled as Slat. which released with tracks such as Location,
This nigga's a dickhead.
Net, and Euphoria.
Like somebody shit, you like shuffle your feet too.
Which was then quickly followed up by the release of a 2-track mini EP hosted by his manager Steph under the name of High Tech Slime, which released with some absolute gems such as Dumb Money and a personal favorite being YOLO. And all of what I just showed you was only a small portion of the different singles that were releasing at the time, which managed to keep his core audience more than satisfied until the rollout of his biggest at the time, which managed to keep his core audience more than satisfied.
This isn't even a good outfit, bro. You just like look like this outfit is pissing me off. It's like, why do you have this isn't
Until the rollout
this nigga's fade, bro.
of his biggest release yet, being Flex Music, which would also come with its own fair share of controversy. So let's go through it. Starting from the beginning, the rollout for this project would start like most projects, with 15-second snippets of different songs on the album being teased and hyped pretty much endlessly, along with his team even getting one of the lead singles being 3X to be aired on OVO Radio on November 29th of 2023, which would be what would officially start this mini marketing campaign, which would most notably include the opening of an IG account called I Make Flex Music, which would end up being the IG account he used to push the hype and aesthetic for the album, which, as you can see on screen, was, according to a large part of his fan base, yet another way of copying Ken Carson, which was mainly due to a very similar rollout happening with Ken Carson's project, A Great Chaos. And to me, this might be the dumbest one out of all the clone allegations. If you've been in the scene for any amount of time,
Yo, that shit, when I saw that shit on Twitter, I think like I really wanted to call somebody to go do a hit on Ken Carson. Because I don't know what these are. This is like Mandela catalog shit. This nigga, and like the part that pisses me off more is how uncomfortable this font is. Because it's like the perfect font. It's the perfect font.
This really isn't an original concept from either of them. Realistically, this whole like aesthetic, while cool, has been going on pretty much since like the beginning of the internet, with artists and groups like Rip Squad and Yabujin who've been doing this kind of thing since like the dawn of time. And also the person who actually designed this exact cover and aesthetic, being Stun Mike, has actually done work for both Destroy Lonely and Homicide Gang. But
what is
Stun
that?
Mike has actually done work for both Destroy Lonely
What is this?
and Homicide Gang. But to be honest, yet again, it's not like it matters at all, because all of the clone allegations would at this point only really help to build up this project's hype even further, which would finally be realized on December 8th of 2023 with the release of his long-awaited project titled Flex Music, with the project coming in at just over 17 tracks long and being easily probably his most well put together project so far, with the 18 different levels of chess his team was playing paired along with just the amount of different standout tracks on this project, such as Blonde, All Star, Pop, all of which
Alright, I don't know what that sound was. That would have pissed me off, but I'm not gonna lie, that wasn't a bad IG. Like, I don't like any of those songs, but they're not. I don't not like them though.
would end up doing insane numbers on both streaming services and on TikTok. But as mentioned, this wouldn't slow Osama down at all, because only a few days after this project's
I miss TikTok.
release, he would end up announcing a full tour for the album that was presented and hosted
Let's analyze this random ass photo.
by Rolling.
Alright, Flex Music rolling out. What is this, bro? I can't even like.
Loud, which he would end up doing with another extremely popular artist in the
Nigga got
scene that
bitches
you've
on
probably
his
heard of
license
recently,
plate.
being Netspend, which is pretty insane considering just how quickly he went from a bubbling underground artist all the way to performing at arguably one of the biggest shows
You
any
like
artist could
Wall
dream of. However, just because he was finally starting to get his spotlight didn't mean he was done trolling, because while he was on tour, he would end up sneaking into Ken Carson's closet and stealing all of his BDSM gear, and he would even start posting
You're nasty. And it was BDSM gear. That's disgusting. This nigga wore another man's sex clothes.
posting pictures
And I'm not gonna lie, bro. I do believe that he does that because gear, not mask, shirt, gear. So that's a lot of things. And he had 2 masks on. That probably got like, I got cheese Louise in it, bro. That's
of him in the mask, and this kind of just sold me on the fact that he's just playing into it for reactions and Twitter mentions, which, like I said quite a few times in this video, this shit is smart. You're not only getting free promotion, but you're also taking, or at least getting, impressions from an audience that will more than likely fuck with your music, and you're most importantly building a fan base that plays defense for you pretty much every single time you troll, which in turn only makes them that much more dedicated. And I don't care if y'all call it D-writing, it is. And also, while still on tour, he would end up releasing his final or most recent drop, which was a deluxe project for the previously mentioned tape, which released on February 16th of 2024 under the name of Flextra, which was yet again received pretty damn well by his fan base, and is also most notably starting to kind of wave off the clone allegations at this point, with the narrative seeming to pretty much mostly run its course, which is a good thing because although Osama stealing Ken's BDSM gear is pretty funny, I think he definitely has milked this whole wave for as much as it's worth. And to me, if he keeps writing this whole Ken thing, it's definitely going to start to get annoying very, very quickly. And overall, I think Osama for the most part is better off leaving this Ken situation where it is today. Even if Ken has also been stoking it a bit by sending out some recent very goofy subliminals on his Snapchat story, I think as long as he focuses on his brand, promoting himself well, and just mainly dropping music like he has been, with us.
No, that's feminine as hell. Call that a go, bro. What happened to Jace?
Osama even having another
Where's Goose Creek? I know it says discography.
tape of his just recently leaked under the name of
I gotta
Stay
stretch
Slime,
this.
which in itself was pretty solid. If he realistically can keep up this pace, he will definitely have a solid chance of solidifying himself in the underground, or hopefully even one day making it mainstream. But until then, it's Team Osa
Stay off them sites.
for life. Mason, y'all not on video over. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked the video and want to show some love, subscribe and turn on noties.
Yo, fuck with this nigga. He's cool. I fuck with his videos. Exit TV or I'm out. Yeah. It's probably like French, and I'm just like disrespecting this nigga. So what I took from this video, Osama's son is a troll. He likes pistols. He makes alright music. I probably will not be listening to anything other than that one song I said was kind of tough, or any more Glock 40 Spaz features, because apparently he's 2 for 2. Let me know how y'all feel about Osama's son as a person. Well, nah, I'm not gonna say as a person, but like his antics online. And did you wash your ass today? Because I know a lot of you niggas didn't. Y'all asking the real questions. Like and subscribe so I can pay for my bills.